Hello, Yiddish lovers and all lovers of old artifacts. My name is Frida Weisel. I run a YouTube channel focused on Judaism, New York City. My special area is Hasidic Judaism. And today I am going to do a read along of a 1977 Hasidic Satmar girls' school book for teachers, written in Yiddish, hand illustrated. We're just going to read it in Yiddish, and I am going to give a summary of what each page is about at the end of it. So, my intended audience for this video is nerds like myself, of course, nostalgia lovers, as well as Yiddish students, people who love Yiddish, who are interested in Yiddish content, as well as those interested in cultural artifacts. It is 147 pages from the onset. I am not sure that I have the time to do all of it since I am obligated to do something in an hour. I'm just going to get started and get as far as I can and just share this with whatever little niche that shares my love for these kinds of things. Okay, so hi. I hope you're doing well. I feel like this is almost like a live stream. It is not though. Um, I am starting with a cover. I do want to say that I got this book from Samuel Marks, who's an amazing person, 26-year-old with who's incredibly brilliant and very, very intellectual, curious, and his interest as a secular Jew in the Hasidic community is something I relate to a lot. We have been in contact for a while, and I recently interviewed him, and I really tried not to like lavish him with a lot of praise because I feel like it can make people feel uncomfortable. But now here I can freely say what I think. Very gifted person who I've been so lucky to get emails from occasionally. One of the benefits of being a YouTuber is I get emails from people and they share their finds, they share links. I really love it. Even though I don't always reply, I almost always look at them. And he's been sharing really interesting things. And then he shared this book and he shared some pages. He bought it from a seller, I believe online. I don't remember if it was online. I believe it was online. And I asked him if he could scan it, and he was so kind as to scan the whole thing at University of Michigan's high resolution scanner, 147 pages, late night working on it because of his great love for preserving valuable artifacts. And it's just incredible. I'm so grateful for that. So I'm just going to look through it with you all here today. So settle in, grab something. I'm going to read some Yiddish and try to translate. Yiddish comes in two prints. This is the block letters, um, and that's how it's usually typed. So this is class one, and it says Verlehrerin, which means it's a reader for teachers, not for the students. This is um, here you can put your name, address, apartment, class, teacher, and year, Hebrew year. It says who printed it. It was printed by Hatsus Fudum in Yiddish Sprach by Struchel de Satmar, which is the school I attended, and I was born in 1985. This was printed in 1977. So let's say I was a first grader in 1991. We still used such books. Um, this was printed in Brooklyn. I grew up in Kiryas Joel, but it's extremely connected, these two communities. Voorwoord, zie de goede leren. Dus deze Leinbuch is speziell geeignet für kleinere Kinder von der ersten Klasse. Die Kinder, weshalb mir jetzt unser Schulgang mit der ersten Klasse haben noch nicht gelernt, wie soll sie lernen die jiddische Buchstaben. They still can't read Yiddish letters. Es ist der Fall unmöglich, was sie geben, ein Buch zu lernen. Ich würde sagen, mit den Kiddes wollen sie erst später umfangen. Der Fall ist die Buch gemacht geworden mit viel Bilder in minimum Leinwörter. So they're saying these students cannot yet read, and therefore it has been made with a lot of pictures. Die Aufgabe von den Lehrern ist, vorzulinen die Maße von einem Bier und geben für die Kinder die Gelegenheit, sie vertrachten sich in dem Inhalt, darum umkicken die Bilder, weil jedes Kind hat für sich ein Bier. So the teacher's obligation is to read the story and then have the children think about it and look at the pictures in each child's book, and the images will guide the child. Die Bilder, weil jedes, es ist der Fall von größter Wichtigkeit, die Lehrerin soll statt verleihen die Masse in sich aufstellen bei jedem pur Wetter im Vasen auf dem Bild, was redet sich von dem, überfragen dich die Kinder, sie sei verstehen, inhalten mit dem Inhalt. Auch ist wichtig zu wissen, als so wie die Kinder können noch alleine lernen, wenn ein Kind fragt einmal über eine Sache, soll man gedenken, als man kann das Kind nicht empfinden, seist denn nicht inneweinig oder kick heran, was die wissen. Das kann wirken, als das Kind soll verlieren dem Geschick zum Ausheben. So it's essentially giving guidance to teachers to be mindful that the students can't just look at the text as a source for what's happening. It will deter the children to continue to engage with the material if the teacher pushes the students to a frustration point, essentially. Noch jede Maße darf die Lehrerin sie fragen, die Fragen bei den Kindern, jedes Kind eine andere Frage, damit sie sehen, wie stark es hat für die Kinder gefallen. In Beiker bei sei, haben das Richtige verstanden. In kurze Wörter nicht vergessen, die Kinder können noch nicht lernen. Sie dürfen nicht kennen und nicht sie lernen, noch kein Lernen, nur ausheben die Maße, in Kicken betrachten die Bilder. Der Zweck von die Maße ist nur Chinuch. So, again, paraphrasing, essentially saying, remember, these children can't read yet. The purpose is not for them to learn how to read, only to listen to the story. It is only educational. Chinuch is educational, but it's not only educational, it's moral education. The term chinuch contains in itself the assumption that it's education with moral lessons. It's not for a career, it's not for tools for life, it is to impart the moral values of the society to the children. So all of this is typed in block letters, and now we have in script letters in Yiddish. Nicht vergessen, die Kinder kennen noch nicht lernen, sie dürfen nicht sie kennen, nicht sie lernen, noch sie kein lernen, nur ausheben die Maße, in Kicken betrachten die Bilder, der Zweck von die Maße ist nur Chinuch. So I'm paraphrasing all of this, but essentially saying this is a reader of stories, and it's just for the teacher to read to them. And these images are so typical of my childhood. They were what we learned to draw, and we spent a lot of time drawing ourselves. And we used a lot of rulers and created stuff like these classrooms, bedrooms, and so on. Okay, so the Rifkele Tug Arderung. A little bit, it's hard for me to read just because of the distance. It's like because of the way the screen is set up, I can't zoom it, then you won't be able to read. So I'm just telling you that I'm having a little bit of a hard time just seeing the letters. Okay. Sura Rifkele is fin die gut feine Kinder. Ihre Eltern in ihre Lehrerin sagen, es es geht sich abzulehnen von ihr, wie soll sich aufzufieden a ganzen Tag. Du will mir achter Zahlen, wie soll zu der Rifkele fiet sich auf, was der Fin ist jeder stark zufrieden. So Sura Rifkele, which by the way is a name that's very common in my family because my grandmother, may her memory be a blessing, was named Sura Rifkele. So we're talking about someone I almost know. She's from the great children. She's from the gut feine Kinder. She's the best of the best, and everyone says you should learn from her. And here we will learn why. Jeden in der Früh, wenn der Seiger klingt, im 7 a Seiger in die Sinn heibt und sie heranschauen in einem Zimmer, macht Surifkla auf die Augen und sagt, Shine moida ani. Every morning the sun starts to shine, the clock rings, she opens her eyes and she says her morning prayers. Flinking geschwind heibt sich Surifkla auf im Bett. Sie gießt sich schön ob Nägelwasser, wo sie hat von Nacht umgegreit. Sie drückt schnell zurück heran der Seige, gedei nicht aufzuwecken ihre kleine Schwesterlich mit einem kleinen Briderl. So she washes her hands. You're supposed to wash your hands. It's called Nägelwasser to remove spirits, negative spirits that settle on the body during the night. And she was mindful enough to prepare it in advance the night before. So she has that lavud and tepel, the bowl and the water prepared, and she washes her hands and she quickly turns off the alarm clock so it wouldn't disturb her younger siblings. Sie tut sich gleich ihre Wäsche in Kleider und legt zusammen den Nachthemd, gdei anzuspuren von die Mama der Arbeit. Sie legt schön aus die Dachene und trugt daraus die Lavur mit dem Nägelwasser. So she cleans up so nicely after herself. She puts on her clothing and she folds her nightgown and she makes her bed. And then she carries out the bowl of water, of impure water. Sie pitzt sich schein aus die Zähne, sie wascht sich auf dem Punam und sie schwenkt sich aus dem Maul. So she brushes her teeth and rinses her mouth. So der Rivkele geht heran in die Koch und sie trefft dort ihre Mama. So der Rivkele sagt, a guten Morgen, Mama. Und die Mama empfiehlt ihr, a guten Morgen, so der Rivkele. Sie setzt sich schein herup am Tisch und hypt und sie sagen die Bruches. So she comes into the kitchen and she greets her mother nicely. And she doesn't say mommy, which is the more casual address. She says actually mama. So this so der Rivkele we're already seeing is like seriously creating competitive energy for behavior. Forgive me, I can't resist. Okay, I'm gonna keep my commentary out. I was never a Sidderifkele. Die Mama greift derweil dem Frühstück. Sie deckt dem Fisch mit sie deckt dem Tisch mit feinen Sachen und wenn sie der Rivkele endigt, sie sagen die Bruches, ist schon du auf dem Tisch alle gitte Essen weg, was die Mama will Hand geben. So, the mother prepares breakfast and sets the table, and by the time Rivkele finishes with her morning prayers, which are called bruchas, the table is already set with whatever the mother prepared. So Rivkele geht sie zum Kran und wascht sich schein die Hände, also wie die Mama hat sie gelernt. Erst gießt sie auch auf die rechte Hand zweimal und nachdem zweimal auf die linke Hand. Sie hypt auf die Hand hoch und sie sagt, Sei Deichem Kodesh, Evarchi es Hashem, ואסי חפה על מצווסךו, אשר אוהבתי ושיחו בחיקךו. Nachdem sagt sie schein hoch die Brüche. Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kitshoni b'mitzvosav v'tzivuni, al netilas yadayim. Die Mama sagt noch Amen in zu der Rivkele, wischt sich ab die Hände, weil die Lehrerin hat gesagt, als man tun nicht unheuben zu essen, bis wenn die Hände werden nicht im Ganzen tricken. So, she's following very minute ritual hand washing obligations. First the right hand twice, then the left hand twice. Then she raises her hands and she says, "Si Daichem Kodesh," and pre-prayer, and then she says the actual blessing, and then she wipes her hands. So these are certain halachic requirements of before eating bread, and these young children are learning how to follow these rituals step by step. So next step of her morning is Number 9, dennoch nimmt sie ein Reifsel Brot in die rechte Hand. Sie gabt es mit beiden Händen und sucht heuer die Brüche, Baruch At Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, ha-moitzi lechem min haaretz, und die Mama empfiehlt Amen und zu Rivkele hypt tun essen. So another part of what she needs to do before she can eat bread, and this is specific to when you eat bread, is she needs to raise the bread and bless the bread itself, and at all points her mother is around and is answering Amen to the blessings that Rivkele is reciting. So Rivkele hat lieb, wenn der Brot ist ungeschmiert mit Pitter, will sie beten für die Mama, sie soll es ihr unschmieren. Aber die Mama ist herangegangen zu dem kleinen Kind, geben ein Fläschchen Milch. Ist sie nicht herangegangen, stehen die Mama, nur sie hat gewartet, bis die Mama ist herausgekommen, und dann hat sie gesagt, Mama, sei Meuchel, schmier den Brot mit Pitter. Die Mama hat ihr ungeschmiert und so Rivkele hat gegessen. She likes butter on her bread, and she wants her mother to put butter on the bread. I'm guessing she's too young to put it on her own. And her mother went to take care of the baby, so she waits patiently for her mother to return. She doesn't go after her mother and disturb her. Inmitten nimmt Rivkele in Acht, als die Mama greit Eierspeis. So Rivkele will aber jetzt nicht essen kann Eierspeis, rief sie sich und sie ihr Mama. Ich will das nicht, Mama, bitte mach das nicht vor mir. Nein, sagt die Mama, die sollst wissen, als das ist eine wichtige Sache und ich heiß dir doch nicht wollen, ich heiß dir essen. So der Rivkele weiß, als die Mama heißt, müssen wir folgen, esst sie schein auf das, was die Mama stellt in Teller, und wenn sie ist fertig, bencht sie schein hoch. So she notices her mother is making scrambled eggs for breakfast, and she says, Mama, I don't want scrambled eggs. And her mother says, I don't, it's not about if you want, it's about eating. I'm not telling you to want, I'm telling you to eat. And so Rivka knows that when the mother tells you to do something, you do it, and she eats it nicely. And afterwards, she recites the after prayers called the Benchen. Okay, next in Sir Rivka's day, sie packt sich zusammen die Schieltasche, sucht für die Mama scheinen hoch a gitten Tug, kischt die Mezizah und geht arup warten auf den Bus. So she packs up her school bag, she kisses the mezuzah, and she is going to wait for the bus. Wenn sie kommt und zum Corner und sie darf herübergehen die Gas und sie kommen dort, wie der Bus steht, sucht sie, seht sie, als der Lamp ist grün, aber sie will nicht herübergehen allein, weil die Mama hat sie gelernt, als man tut nicht allein übergehen die Gas. Sie sieht, wie der Bus kommt schon und sie hat Moira, als sie wird nicht umkommen zum Bus, bevor es wird wegfuhren. So she's afraid she's going to miss the bus, she has to cross. Und du kommt Mrs. Schwarz, zu der Rivkele schachente, und zu der Rivkele sagt ihr, Saat Moichel, fiet mir herüber die Gas, Mrs. Schwarz fiet sie herüber, und zu der Rivkele bedankt sich für ihr und geht herauf auf den Bus. So Mrs. Schwartz arrives and crosses her nicely, and Rivka asks nicely. She says, Zat Moichel, which is please or forgive me, is what it technically means. And she's now on the bus. Wenn der Bus kommt in Schule, läuft zur Rivkele nicht arup mit Wildkeit, nur sie geht arup scheingelassen von dem Bus und geht heran in die Schulgebäude. Wenn die Lehrerin kommt heran, stellt sich zur Rivkele auf und sagt, guten Morgen, und die Lehrerin empfört zurück. So she doesn't run off the bus, she walks down demurely and she goes into the classroom, and when the teacher enters the classroom, she stands up and she greets the teacher. All of this is such a profound example of the female socialization in this world, where these girls are learning Eitelkeit. Eitelkeit in standard Yiddish usually means more refined. In Hasidic Yiddish, it means demure. It means self-contained. It means everything that Surah here is a child who's really, really well-behaved and essentially subverts her needs for or subverts any childishness for the benefit of that which is admired and appreciated. She's a very, very good kid, and that's an idle kid. Auch in Class fiet sie sich auf bescheiden und mit der redet. Sie hört sich, zieht sie alles, was die Lehrerin sagt, in tracht bei sich. Ich will folgen alles, was mir lernen hand. Wenn sie will etwas fragen von der Lehrerin, hebt sie auf ihr Hand und dabei passt sie auf, als der Arbel soll sich ihr nicht raufrücken. Wenn es fällt etwas auf die Erde, beigt sie sich idle das aufzuheben. And here we see actually the word idle, and it's a really good example of what idle means in Hasidic Yiddish. So it says, in the classroom, she raises her hand anytime she wants to say something. She doesn't disrupt, she doesn't just call out. But when she raises her hand, she's mindful that her sleeve shouldn't roll up and reveal her elbow. And likewise, if something falls, she bends down idle. So she's modestly making sure everything remains covered. And again, the word idle here is about demureness, modesty, restrained, self-contained, a kind of feminine ideal that is very much, it's not about being refined, although it's a certain kind of refined, but it's more than that. It's about keeping yourself in accordance to all of the values that is about obedience and conformity and respect. Bei Pause, nachdem sie endlich ihr Essen in macht eine Nachtbrüche, spielt sie sich schein mit ihren Chavertes in Häuf. Sie spielt mit dem Ball an den Strick, wenn sie bemerkt, als ihre Chavertes Gittele steht in der Saat und hat nicht wem sie spielen. Tät sie ziriefen Gittelen in nimmt sie aran in dem Spiel. So during recess, she plays games, and when she notices her friend Gittela doesn't have with whom to play, she calls Gittela in and she brings her into the group. And this is another part of female socialization I learned very strongly, and one that I look back with a lot of admiration. All of these things have obviously shortcomings, and there's a lot to discuss, but this particular part of the socialization was something I personally responded to very positively. I saw it as something to emulate, and I saw it as something not only that I admired, but that I didn't feel um, squashed me. Whereas a lot of what I am reading about the Sudurifkala for me and my personality felt like an impossible objective. And I experienced it very negatively. I experienced it as a bar I couldn't live up to. Whereas this part, which is by Nudem Lachvaido, about being kind to each other, I felt very drawn to. Wenn dem Gleckel klingt mit beim Heimgehen fin Schul, in die Lehrerin heißt vermachen die Heften, packt sie es schein zusammen und geht sie zu der Schaffe rauszunehmen ihr Mantel. So school is over, she packs up nicely and she goes to coat closet and she takes her mantle, her coat. And by the way, a lot of words here are very much what we call pure Yiddish, Yiddish words that are now replaced by English words for the contemporary Yiddish speakers. For instance, gleckel for bell. Bell is now used. Gleckel is Yiddish. Bell is English. Or recess. Recess is now used. They use posa here. Likewise, mantel. Mantel is a Yiddish word, and coat is what's now used. Sie geht heraus in Häuf und setzt sich auf den Bus. Sie springt nicht und lacht nicht, nur sitzt ruhig auf die Platz, bis der Bus kommt und heim. Sie geht herab im Wart, bis die Lehrerin führt sie über die Gas. Sie geht herauf heim und sagt, a guten Tag für jeden, was ist in Stieb. So she goes out to the courtyard of the school and she gets onto the bus. Sie springt nicht und lacht nicht, nur sitzt ruhig auf ihr Platz. She doesn't jump and she doesn't laugh. She sits calmly in her place until she gets home. And when she gets home uh, to her bus stop, she waits for the teacher to cross her. So the bus teacher is the one who gets her across the street. And then she gets home and she greets everyone who's home nicely. You can see a lot of precautions that children are learning here about relying on community members for safety, which is another thing that I'm very interested in. And I talk about in my walking tours about the mechanism of community safety that is implemented through each other's and the children learning to rely on each other. So she's relying on a bus teacher, a neighbor, and so on to get her across the street safely. Sie legt avec ihr Schildtasch auf den Platz und hängt auf ihr Mantel. Ihr kleine Schwester kommt ihr entgegen und fragt sie, wie bist du gewesen? Einfach zu der Rivkele, in Schule. Ich hab dort gelernt, als man darf folgen dem Taten in den Mammen und tun alles, was sie heißen. Die Lehrerin hat auch gesagt, als ich soll mich spielen mit dir, kedai, die sollst nicht stehen, Mamin, für die Arbeit. So, it's also very interesting. She puts away her briefcase really nicely, and her little sibling comes to her and says, "Where were you?" And she says, "I was in school." And then she launches into to say what she learned in school. So she's essentially acting as an educator to her younger sibling who's not yet in school. She's passing on the message. So these young children are themselves acting in roles of being teachers in their own way by being told you're also here to help mom at all times, and we've already seen that, and also to show an example to the younger siblings. So she says, quote, I learned there that you have to abide by what the father and the mother say and everything they tell you to do. And the teacher also told me that I should play with you so that you don't disturb mom from her work. A lot of socialization around a value called kibbud avoim, respecting the elders, which is a lot about socializing the children to behave in a way that is um, very hierarchical. There's the parent up high, and the child has to be like quietly be seen but not heard. And again, it's a relic from a different time. I think this is changing in the Hasidic community, and modern cultures used to be like this as well. I mean, remember, this is a 1977 text. I think contemporary Hasidic children's books, and I've read one, are much more oriented towards a close relationship between the parent and child and more in tune parent to the child. So this is really a relic, but it reflects my own socialization very strongly. So der Rivkele spielt sich Schein mit ihrer Schwester Leila, und wenn die Mama rief sie essen Nachtmahl, gehen sie sich schnell abwaschen die Hände mit die Punem, kedai sie sollen sein rein zu essen. So der Rivkele wascht sich zu Bräut und macht hohe Brüche. Sie esst auf alles, was die Mama gibt ihr. Noch ein Essen vergesst sie nicht zu benchen mit Fina Sidder. So mom calls them to dinner, and again she washes her hands and her face, so she arrives to dinner clean. She washes her hands to bread. It's also interesting, I think contemporarily very few people wash their hands to bread for dinner because it requires a lot of extensive blessings, maybe a 5-minute prayer afterwards, washing the hands, the prayers for washing the hands, and then all of that is a little bit of a bother, and oftentimes you only wash for breakfast and not for dinner. And here they're still doing that, and I think it used to be a lot more common to wash for dinner than it is today. So that strikes me as interesting. Maybe there was less money to buy chicken. You didn't fill up on chicken, you didn't fill up on meats, you filled up on a lot of bread. And so it was much more typical to eat a bread dinner. Also, so it reflects a rising socioeconomic change in the community. To me, I might be wrong, of course, with that it's not necessarily about that. Some people will intentionally, when they sit down to a meal, eat bread just in order to um, show the gravity of the meal and go through all of the rituals of washing and benching. Um, and also, she says afterwards a blessing from Siddur, a prayer book. Wenn der Tate kommt daheim von die Arbeit, grüßt sie Schein, a gitten Abend, der Tate empfiehlt ihr und fragt, wo sie haben gelernt in Schule. Sie empfiehlt auf allem, was ihr Tate fragt, ruhig und gelassen. Wenn der Tate setzt sich herab, lehnen noch ein Nachtmahl, macht sie nicht kein Geriedet, gedei nicht, sie stehen, ihr Tate verlehnen. So her father comes home, she greets him nicely, she says good evening, and he asks her what she learned in school, and she tells him calmly and modestly, like ruhig and gelassen. It's not calmly and modestly. It's calmly and slowly, sort of, and patiently. And then her father sits down to study, and she doesn't disturb him while he studies. So, a couple of things you're seeing in the typical family setup of a Hasidic family in, let's say, the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, is the woman is a stay at home mom and is staying with a family of many young children at home all day and taking care of them. And the father goes out to work. And when he comes home, he kind of checks in with his children, and then he has a shiur. He studies some religious texts in the evening, if possible. Wenn es wird 8 Seiger und sie darf schon gehen schlafen, greift zu der Rivkele Nägelwasser neben Bett und sie leint Kriyashma. Sie legt schein herab ihre Sachen in Kiste Mezizah. Sie sagt a gute Nacht für die Eltern und geht im Bett schlafen kedai, sie soll haben, koich, aufzustehen zartlich dem anderen in der Früh. So, when it's 8 o'clock, she gets ready for bed. Her process of getting ready for bed, among some of the things she does, is she kisses the mezuzah, which is the scroll that's on the door, and she prepares the bowl of water in the cup for the following morning. So essentially, you put the water in the cup, and the bowl is there, so you can do it at the bedside. The view is the accepted position, and I don't know the source of this, is that during sleep, negative spirits settle on the body, and you don't want to leave the bed and walk more than 3 steps with these negative spirits. So you want to wash your hands of these spirits before leaving the bed. So unless you have a sink by the bed, you need to get water next to the bed. So you bring the Nagelwasser in advance at night. There are some kids who will not be so mindful as to the Rifkala here, and they will wake up in the morning and start shouting for Nagelwasser. And there are some kids that are just going to get off the bed right away without thinking about it. And you can really get a sense of who's going to be an idle kid, who's going to be a demure, well behaved, good kid, and who's going to be maybe more of a bad egg by the values of this world, based on little things like approach to Nagelwasser, how seriously you take these things. It's so interesting to observe in one family. There will be so many different ways of responding to the same socialization. And Srerifkala in particular is really absorbing the social messaging. Well, that's the end of Sir Rivkala's day. Here are the Fragen, the questions that the teacher now poses to the class. And it's interesting that there are no animals and there are no pets in this world. There are no living beings illustrated in the stories in this reader. But every time when it comes to the questions, we actually do see a charming animal with question marks. So the questions for this story that the teacher would pose to the first graders are: Wer weiß kinderlich Teile? Was tät Sir Rivkele in the free? Who knows, dear children? What does Sir Rivkele do in the morning? Question number 2. Was für a Brüche macht Sir Rivkele fahren essen? Which blessing does Sir Rivkele recite before eating? Was hat sie gelernt in Schule? What did she learn in school? Feed ich mich auf, auch eben Tag? Am I also behaving during the day? So it starts with more ritual based questions. Um, what does she do in the morning? This is open ended. The students will probably be excited with all sorts of things they saw Sarifka do that they want to articulate, that they want to tell the teacher. What blessing did she make? And she made several, so they might be anxiously trying to contribute which blessing they remember. What did she learn in school? Again, it's an open ended question. She learned several lessons. And finally, now to the crux of it, am I behaving also during the day? So, this is one story from this reader. I'm going to wrap it up here because I have to go. Um, very, very, very fascinating. Um, I want to continue this, so I think I'm going to revisit on another day another story. And if you're interested in that, do let me know, and I'll push it to the head of my to-do list or something. I really enjoy this kind of thing, very low key. And now that I'm learning a little bit of video editing, is something I can edit out. My son is here, so occasionally we talk to each other, and I'm going to edit that out on my own. Anyway, I want to say thank you, shkoyach, to all of you. Please share your thoughts. I especially appreciate like um, what you think you saw there that maybe I missed, or maybe how you see it differently. I love that kind of thing. Really enjoy nerding out. Before I head out, I also want to say a big thank you to my channel members. Really, really, really want to wind back my tours in 2026. I find it really difficult for me to do the kind of reading, listening that I usually do because I feel like I'm working too many hours, and being able to work less on my tours by making my YouTube channel a little more of a livelihood has been really, really helpful. I have now, I think, 330 channel members, which is really, really a blessing. I really appreciate it. I publish early for channel members. I look at all the comments. I don't always reply, but immediately after I publish, I'm really excited for a video, or sometimes I'm really nervous. I look at what the channel members were saying, um, and it gives me a little bit of a view of how people are seeing a video at first before it goes out to the wider audience, which is something that has been a gift to me, and I hope has been a little bit of a gift to my channel members, a token of gratitude to you guys. Okay, this is us. Have a good day. I can't help but a little bit of kibitzing and saying Fi de chof git. Behave yourself. Be like Siddharth or don't. Or don't. I'll see you around maybe next time for another story. Bye.